What do you do when you're trying to decide between whether or not you should buy a new or used car? Have you thought about all the questions? Do you know everything that you should be thinking about as you try to decide on that process? I know for me, when I bought my first car, it was a used car, and that was an interesting experience because I almost immediately regretted that decision. That car lasted me just a couple of months, but I've gone through maybe about 5 or 6 cars now in the years that I've been driving, and there are definitely some pros and cons to new cars versus used cars. There are definitely considerations that vary depending on what you're looking for. So as usual, we're going to be trying to go through today what are some of the things that you should think about in a way that helps you make an informed decision, as is our goal here on Learn, Grow, Invest. So, let's get started. We have a good friend, Jillian Jackson, who's going to take us through the things that we need to consider, the options that we may need to weigh before we make this decision. So let's get started.
Learning is the key to successful investing. And who doesn't want to invest in some way?
Here at L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest, we focus on financial education, all with the aim of sharing our knowledge on personal finance, investing, and building wealth. We do this on the foundation of our faith in God.
If a more holistic approach is what you need, check out our Grow Faith-based financial coaching program.
Find out more about us at learngrowinvestclub.com
and follow us on all social media platforms at Learn, Grow, Invest.
All right, welcome back. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for the ability to produce wealth. We pray, Lord, that this will be a meaningful session, one that imparts knowledge to those who will listen. And I pray, Lord, that you'll help everyone make wise investment decisions, wise financial decisions for themselves and their families. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, join me in welcoming Jillian Jackson. Hi, Jillian.
Hi, Jermaine, and good evening, Learn, Grow, Invest fam.
Yes, it's been a while, but I don't think you need an introduction. You are well known to our community members. So if you have missed any of Jillian's previous videos, just pretty much search for, I believe, Jillian, we've done 2 videos on budgeting. You're also a part of our conference last year. And yeah, so just great videos, things you should check out. And we'll talk about how to get in touch with Jillian a little bit later in the video. But Jillian, I'm going to hand over to you and, let you get started.
Sure, and thank you so much, Jermaine. All right, good evening again, everyone. So my presentation tonight is about cruising the options, new versus used cars. So I'm going to go through decoding the road to your ideal ride. And I welcome any questions. I'll look out for them in the chat. And also, I encourage you to ask as many as possible and give me your feedback and comments along the way, okay? So let's get right into it. I'm going to start off with a story. I don't know if you've heard this story before, because I when my last presentation about debt, I introduced you to my first car. Her name is Franny. She's here on the screen. And Franny was a 1999 Honda Integra that I got in 2005. So Franny was a 6-year-old car when I first got her. I was a young 19-year-old, and I didn't have an option at the time because I could not afford a new car at that tender age. So all I could afford was an older car. I would call her old, but an older car, because that's what my monthly payments, when I did the calculation. My sister and I bought it together. When we combined our incomes and saw the monthly payment, we knew that a new car was out of reach completely for what we wanted, at least a decent sized car. But some of you may prefer that new car smell. So stay tuned to hear more about what to think about when considering the purchase of a new or used car. All right. So imagine you're cruising down a picturesque road, wind in your hair, a smile on your face, and suddenly your dream car zooms past you, sleek and shiny, turning heads wherever it goes. you can't help but feel that pang of envy as you watch it disappear into the distance. But then, as you consider your journey, you come across another car, slightly older, but still with a sense of timeless charm. It's been through adventures, it's seen the world, and has stories to tell. You can't help but wonder, should you opt for the allure of a brand new vehicle or embrace the character and savings of a new one, of a used one, rather? So, today, again, I'll be providing you with an informed analysis of the pros and cons of buying a new and used car. And because this is Learn, Grow, and Invest, the first thing we have to think about, of course, is the cost. What's it gonna cost? So there are a few different considerations when thinking about the cost of getting a car, if it's new versus used. And I'm having a slight challenge looking at the chat at the same time. So if there are questions coming up, Jermaine, I'll ask you to help me by pointing them out and I can check afterwards. But when deciding between a new and a used car, some of the cost considerations include the purchase price, of course, the depreciation, and I'll go into what these mean if you're not familiar with these terms, the insurance, of course, the different financing options available for each, and the warranty / maintenance that is offered on both options. Now, deciding between a new and used car is of course a dilemma, because while the new cars offer the latest features and a sense of prestige, used cars can provide excellent value for money. One of the most important factors to consider when making the decision, of course, is the cost. So let's dive a little bit deeper into some of these considerations that will help you to make informed decisions that align with your preferences and your budget. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail, and we'll start with the purchase price. So this graph tells a very important story. One of the most apparent cost differences between a new and a used car, of course, is the price that you're going to pay for it. And it's a no-brainer that a new car costs significantly more at times than a used car. And there are many things that go into the price of a car, of course. But the new car price, as you can see, this is based on US figures actually. So don't look at the numbers and think you can get a car for $39,000 in Jamaica. Not gonna happen. But the trends in the US, because of course we don't collect data like this in Jamaica as frequently, but the trends in the US show that new cars, of course, are significantly on average higher than used cars. And then when you trade in your car in America, we don't have this a lot out here, but when you trade in your car, of course, you're going to pay a lot less because you're getting some equity out of the car that you were once using. So you get some value there. Give me 1 second. Having a little bit of a freezing issue here. I'm going to just stop sharing and share again in a second. 1 sec. No, it's completely frozen. Okay, I can't even stop sharing. All right, are you guys hearing me well?
Yes, hearing you. You want to maybe rejoin? Try that all together.
All right, let me do that. Okay, I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. I will rejoin in 10 seconds or as soon as I
No
can.
problem.
All right, it seems to be working now. Hold on.
Okay. All right, go ahead and share again.
All right, so I'm going to, oh, great. Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna reshare. Sorry about that break in transmission. All right. Tell me if you're seeing it now.
Seeing average new car price.
All right, let me go back then to the previous one. We're looking at, right, the considerations between new and existing. So new cars come with a higher price due to factors like the advanced features, of course, and then the warranties that I'll speak about in a bit. And on the other hand, used cars are definitely more affordable because they've already had that initial depreciation. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that on the next slide. So, of course, what you have to do when deciding here is to assess your budget and financial capabilities. Is that new car smell and all those nice features that you're gonna get, and the fact that nobody has ever sat in your seat before, and that there's 0 miles on the odometer, is all of that worth the price that you're gonna pay when it comes to financing a new versus a used car? Some of you who, I know there's some really rich people here on the call and can just close your eyes and swipe your card, or do a transfer and you can pay for a car full in cash. But most of us, or 9 out of 10 of us, 9 out of 10 times, we will opt for financing, other people's money. Particularly if you get a concessionary rate or something like that, like from your job, where you get a special rate on purchasing vehicles, it may make more sense to actually finance the cost of the vehicle rather than pay for it upfront in cash. So when you do that, the higher price may seem more feasible because you're only paying a small amount each month. But if you were to take your hard-earned cash and buy a car, and you're paying market value, or paying the sticker price for the car, then it might be a little bit more difficult. So assessing your budget and what your capabilities are, of course. If you're trying to be financially responsible, that would be the first step in making any big purchase like this. And I'll go into some of the calculations in a bit. And another thing to consider is that because of the fact that have been some supply chain problems recently emanating from COVID and the global automotive industry having some backlog there has been a drop in production in a few million vehicles than would have had happened the years before. So the supply of new vehicles is starting to improve, but there are still millions of missing vehicles that has caused the demand to go up for vehicles. And the time period for new vehicles, particularly, I know people waiting months now to get a new vehicle, especially in Jamaica as well, because we have to import them. If you want a new vehicle, you have to wait a long time, or longer than we're used to in recent years. So that demand now has driven the prices up. You see this steep slope here that happened somewhere between in 2022, late 2021 or mid 2021 during COVID. It's tapering off now, but that steep increase has made the option of an used car more attractive for some people, because they are not willing to pay the extremely higher price or the much higher price for a new car. All right, so there are some other considerations for the cost, particularly depreciation. So depreciation on a car is just the purchase value of the car minus the value of the car after a number of years. So if you're selling your car 3 or 4 years down the line, the market value of the car at that time minus what you purchased, subtracted from what you purchased it for, that's how much your car has depreciated over time. So it's widely known that a new car depreciates much faster in the first year of ownership. So once you drive it off the lot, as you can see by the graph here, the car can lose up to 30% of the value in the first year. And I have a little article on my website, financialsensibility.com, that also speaks about this. So you can read more there as well to support what you're learning today. But 30% of the value can be lost in the first year, and then the depreciation kind of tapers off after that over the next 1 to 6 years. Eventually, about at the 11-12 year mark, it goes practically all the way down to zero. And I'll tell you what implication that has in the financing in a bit. But the steep devaluation of the new car is a risk that you can take, to say that that if something should happen, and God forbid you're in an accident and the car needs to be repaired or written off entirely, you may owe more than the car can be sold for if you choose to finance 90% or over of that amount, or 70% or over of that amount. You may be liable for the difference because you're not going to be able to recover the value of that car if something happens to it in that first year. In contrast, used cars have already undergone that initial drastic depreciation, so there's a slower decline. So understanding that the depreciation impacts how much you're able to sell the car for from the time you acquire it. So if you acquire it new and you want to sell it in 3 years, you're going to have a significant decline in a significant difference in the amount that you purchased it for versus how much you can sell it for during that after that 3 year period. So it's up to you to kind of gauge the long-term plan and see you're comfortable with it. Are you comfortable with selling your car for less than 30% of the value in a year? It's up to you. If you can manage that for the satisfaction of a new car and the luxury of that new car and this new car smell and the technology and things like that, then go for it. So some other factors that influence depreciation. So depreciation is not the same for every car. So things like the brand reputation of the car, there are some that depreciate much higher than the others or much quicker than the others. Hondas don't depreciate as fast as, for example, a Nissan or a BMW or a Mercedes. These are the cars, and this is in America, but I'm sure the same is applicable here, that have the highest level of depreciation. Those luxury cars, they depreciate much faster because they're harder to maintain. The maintenance cost of them affects their depreciation as well. And of course, the mileage. If you were driving to Negril every day in your car versus driving around Kingston, the depreciation would be faster for the car that has more mileage on it. And the mileage, of course, is a factor when you're ready to resell your car. People look at the mileage when they're trying to buy a car. If the mileage is too much, then they're not willing to pay as much, so the value depreciates more. And of course, the market demand for that car. So I know there's a high demand for certain types of cars, like tell me one Pro Box fits, those type of cars. You can always find somebody who wants to buy those type of cars. So they may not depreciate as fast, or Toyota or a Honda, because the demand is high, because they're reliable. Parts are relatively cheap and easy to find, relatively cheaper and easier to find. So people will opt for certain types of cars, which means that they depreciate a little bit slower than others. All right. So the next thing to consider is insurance. And these are some of the things that impact insurance. But since we're talking about new versus used car, I will circle the key one here, which is your car's year, make, and model. That impacts how much you're going to pay for insurance. And of course, if you have a Jaguar versus if you have a Pro Box, you know that the Jaguar's insurance is going to be more than the Pro Box's insurance. If you have a new Jaguar versus a used Jaguar, the new Jaguar's insurance is going to be more than the used Jaguar's insurance, because insurance is a function of the market, the resale value or the market value of the vehicle. So if you have a used vehicle, the market value is lower, insurance will be lower in general. There are some exceptions, but in general. And then of course, even though the newer cars may have certain safety features and advanced technologies, so the insurance is going to be higher, because to fix those advanced technologies, it's going to cost more. So as car prices go up, and they have gone up significantly as we saw, social insurance. So when you're thinking about the overall cost of getting a car, insurance cannot be left out, because insurance is mandatory in Jamaica. I know some people don't think it is, but it is. It's mandatory, and the fines have recently gone up significantly for not having any insurance on your car. All right. So when you're thinking about insurance, remember that used cars generally will have lower premium rates than new cars. Another consideration, of course, the most important one for me, the financing options. So, what is available for a used car versus a new car? Say you were to purchase a used car for $5 million and you can get a loan term of 5 years. I asked my team to do a little research on this. I'm going to bring over my sheet quickly and just show you what some of the not building society, credit unions and banks across Jamaica, the difference in financing that they will offer for a new vehicle versus a used vehicle. So the term or the period of time that you can finance the vehicle for is going to be longer for a new car because I figure that car will depreciate over a longer period of time. It will take some time for it to get down to a very low market value. So they're giving you a longer period of time. But for a used car, they will typically, not all, but typically will have shorter loan term options because they expect that if something should happen, they want to be able to recover the money that they lend to you quicker. So the new cars, you see most companies will give new cars up to 10 years of vehicle financing. So you see that's consistent in the market right now. Used cars, however, you see it varies, but 46, 47, 48, some go up as far as the 10, some have 9, some have 6. So the average is like in the 6, 7, 8 range, not as much as 10. And some of you might be like, why would I want a 10-year car loan? But I will show you somewhat of a difference that it makes in just your affordability. So that affordability is a consideration that the bank or credit union or wherever you're getting the car from, if you can afford the monthly repayments of that car, then you can be considered to get a car loan of a certain size. And if it's a new car, you have a longer period to finance the car. So that means your monthly payment can be smaller. Then it can be more manageable in your overall monthly obligation. So that's a consideration that is done in financing car. So if you have a loan amount of $5 million, a loan term of 5 years on average, an interest rate of 8%, your monthly payment would be $101,000 and you will pay a little bit over $1,082,000 in interest over the 5 years. So that sounds like a lot, don't it? What happens too is that if it's a new car, you could also get favorable interest rates. You may or may not. So I didn't collect any data on the interest rates that are offered for new versus used cars. But because you can get a better interest rate on a new car for that same $5 million, if you, for example, were to extend it to the full 10-year loan term that is generally being offered in the market now, and you get a slightly better interest rate of 7%. And as again, disclaimer, I didn't do a lot of deep diving into what rates are being offered now. I just have a general idea. The monthly payment is almost half, so $58,000, and you'll pay a lot more interest because you're paying it over 10 years. But if what you're looking at is the monthly payment and how much you can afford to take out of your salary every month to repay a car loan, then this might look more favorable to you. I can afford 58,000, but $100,000 is mortgage money. Can I really take up $100,000 and it's the same $5 million I'm getting, the same amount I'm financing? So some people may say, you know what, I'm gonna opt for the new car because it seems like a smaller monthly payment. But don't be fooled too quickly, because if you're looking at the long-term obligations, you're paying almost double in interest. for having a smaller monthly payment. So think about the financial options. You can go on my website, financialsensibility.com, and I have an auto loan calculator. You can put these figures in and play around with it. Look at what the monthly payment would be. All you have to do is enter the loan amount, the term, the years. Oh, and another thing that they might do for a new car that may seem attractive as well is that some companies might say you don't have to finance any of it. So you don't have to make a down payment at all. For a used car, you will definitely have to make a down payment. Most times you will. So then you might say, okay, since I don't have to come out of pocket and pay anything to the vendor, if I'm getting a new car, then this might be the option for me. If I'm getting a used car, I mean, it will cost me more upfront and I have to pay a higher monthly payment. That might not seem so attractive, but don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Look at the interest that you're paying over time and see if that makes sense as well. So in summary, for this part, the used cars might have higher interest rates, shorter tenures, but you will be paying less in interest. And remember that some banks will not even finance a car over a certain age period. So in the article that I had before, what I could find is that most were not financing anything over 10 years. So if you wanted to go and get a car loan for a 2012 car, it may not be possible because it's over 10 years and the banks are not trying to expose themselves to the liability of financing a car older than 10 years. So if you're in the market, I would say that definitely try and shop for a car younger than 10 years and think about the financial implications of each option here. The last thing to consider in terms of the cost now are the warranty and maintenance. So the warranty is for new cars. Typically, new cars come with a manufacturer warranty that offer comprehensive coverage for a specific period. So they'll say like a year or 3 years or specific mileage. So if you drive within a certain number of miles or kilometers, then the warranty covers protection against defects in the materials on the car, repairs or replacements at little to no cost to the owner. So new cars will come with some type of warranty or service contract for a period of time, generally. Used cars now, in America now they have a certified pre-ownership program where you can the car is inspected and it's certified as pre-owned, so they will have some warranty coverage for those type of cars. But for the most part, most used cars are sold as is with no warranty or coverage, with the buyer assuming all the responsibility for any repairs or maintenance on that car. So if you're willing to accept any maintenance costs, just like buying a house, you know that houses come with maintenance, cars come with maintenance as well. I know some people are driving their car, the tire is begging bread, the oil light has been on for 5 weeks and we just ignore it. We hear a noise in the radiator, we turn up the engine. I mean, we turn up the we turn up the volume on the radio so we don't hear the noise. Eventually those things may catch up with you. So I encourage you to do regular maintenance on your car, because if you're not paying now, you're going to pay probably more in the future for it. So in terms of maintenance, new cars usually have lower maintenance costs, of course, because they're new. We are unlikely to experience any major mechanical issues due to their pristine condition. And it requires fewer repairs since the parts and components are less likely to wear out or malfunction. But routine inspections like oil changes, tire rotations are typically covered with the manufacturer's warranty, or usually covered. For used cars, they generally have higher maintenance costs, of course. So as vehicles age and accumulate miles, this system start to pop down, you hear like a rattle there in the radiator, the AC, all of a sudden you start feeling hot, especially like how summer coming on. That's when the AC typically start to stop working. Speaking from experience. And those costs are going to be borne by you. So ensure that if you're buying a used car, you bring your mechanic with you, you do your inspection, you get a valuator, go down to one of those valuation companies. I'm not promoting any of them, but go down there, get it valued, get it inspected, let them do a history check on it, and ensure that what you're getting is what you expect that you're getting. And of course, do the repairs by a professional, especially if you're buying a new car. Ensure that if when eventually when you have to do any repairs, that you're getting them done by a professional. All right. And of course, there are different things that affect what you're gonna get included in the warranty, of course, than they're on the screen. And then another non financial consideration for new, or the primary non financial consideration for new versus used cars, is how much customization and technology you can do. So with a new car, of course, you can do all the customization you want. I know my friend in America, she just bought a BMW, and she was able to go on and say what color seat she wants, what color trim she wants. She was ordering from a menu. She just decided to click here, add this, take away that, put that color there, and you can customize and do whatever you want. When you're buying a used car, you don't have that option, of course. You just take what you get. And there are lots of nice new technologies that people will find attractive and the used cars may not have, like navigation, keyless entry, remote start, an eco-friendly car, an electric car, a self-driving car. Not here, of course, but there are lots of fancy new shiny technologies that new cars have to offer that you may say, it makes my life so much easier. I can't see myself driving a car without this feature. Like for me, I love push to start, and I have a push to start car. And the other day, because of the AC issue, the car was in the garage for a little while, and I got a little loan, and that was a keyed entry, key to start, not push to start, key to start. And I can tell you that I felt like I was going back in the dinosaur ages. I'm not trying to impugn on anybody that has a car with a key, but once you go push to start, going back to key to start is very hard, because I would just jump in the car, pressing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where are the keys? I have no idea, because usually they're just in my bag somewhere. I have no idea where they are to start the car. I know they're there in the car, but I don't know where they are. And of course, things like, my reverse camera. I couldn't manage. It was a struggle to manage without it, because once you get used to that reverse camera, it's hard to go back. So there are some technologies you said, boy, I need to get a new car because it have those things. I know somebody who recently got a car and it has, active braking. So if you're too close to something, it will brake for you so that you don't hit it. And of course, the reverse sensor, wireless charger. You just put your phone down and it starts to charge. You don't actually have to plug it into anything. Those are the types of technologies these new cars are coming with. If you know any other technologies that you can't live without, I'd love to hear from you. Drop it in the chat. Let me know. I'd be happy to hear about the new car technologies. I may not be familiar with all of them. And of course, when you do your analysis of emissions and fuel efficiency and things like that, you might opt for a more fuel efficient car, and the older cars may not be as fuel efficient. So that's another consideration. So to summarize, some of the advantages of the new cars are the availability of the latest models, technologies, and features, potential for customization, and personal preferences. And the disadvantages are the higher initial purchase price due to factors like depreciation and demand, limited negotiation opportunities, whereas a used car, a lower initial purchase price, providing more value for money. And then if you know that it's used, you can negotiate with the seller for a better price. And older models may, of course, lack the latest features, and then the condition and maintenance of the vehicle must be carefully considered, do evaluation, get an understanding of the condition of the vehicle. And I thank you for having me. Let me know in the chat if you, after this presentation, which one you're going to opt for. Is it new or used? Tell me.
Great. Thank you so much, Dylan. We probably should do a poll. I think we'll do a poll on our community page and on Twitter. Then we'll see what the results say. A question
Yay.
though from me, Jillian. I find this very, very irritating when I try to sell a used car. Why is it that persons don't respect the valuation? It's almost like whenever you're selling a used car, they look at the valuation, they look at the for sale, and they want to offer you the for sale, completely ignoring the valuation.
I mean, I have a similar experience. I guess it's something it's a thing. So everybody does it. So everybody does it. So that's the norm now. I don't know. You're absolutely right. So people try to get, of course, the lowest that they possibly can, and they just go for the lower number on the paper.
It's almost like it's assumed because for houses have the same thing. You have a valuation and you have a for sale. For a house, it's definitely not the same, but it's almost like, I mean, I guess I get it because whenever you go to look at a used car, you always assume that there's something that the seller is not telling you.
Yeah.
Like there's something like I'm gonna drive it down the road and the AC is gonna stop working or something like that. So
exactly.
we do have a couple of questions. So let me
Nice.
run through them. First one is from Andrea. Andrea has asked a couple of them, by the way. How much value does a new car lose as soon as it's driven off the lot? So I know that you said up to
30 the
30%.
first year. I had a number on my site. I think it was like it was up to the 30. So it can be between between I think the first week was at least 10% in the first week. So if you drive it off and come back, you've lost 10%. And then up to 30 by the end of the year, typically.
Yeah, I've seen so interesting thing. I bought a car 2019, right? We know what happened in 2020, and I did a valuation in 2021. I think it was our late 2020, and actually the car barely decreased. It wasn't more than maybe somewhere between 5 to 10%, and that's because one, I wasn't driving it, so the mileage was pretty low.
Mileage was low, okay.
Yeah, so it was able to hold a lot of its value, I think, in that first year. I'm
Very
3 years in now, almost 4 years in, and it's only been down about 20% in the 4 years. So that's actually pretty good.
Awesome. It must be one of those brands that hold value well.
Something like that. Something like that.
Right. Yep. Great.
So Andrea is asking what is the market looking like for EVs?
I'm excited about the prospects for electronic vehicles. I would love to get one. That's my dream. I'm actually looking into getting a hybrid now, but there
What about the cost? Because it's
Hmm?
I've heard about costs from between like 8 to 12 million for them.
Yeah. I got a quote this week for, let's say, more than that. But
wow.
I mean, my sister, she drives a electric Mustang, but she lives in America. She drives an
Okay,
electric
I'll just ask
Mustang.
if that's in Jamaica.
No, she can't have that house here because it's fully electric. And she her job offers her free charging, and she doesn't have to buy gas because it's fully electric. So she's gotten rid of her gas bill entirely. So if imagine you got rid of your gas bill, how much money would you be able to save or put towards the purchase of a car? I mean, we don't have a free charging out here, but if you have a hookup with JPS and you can manage to get a little deal on some charging, then it may work out for you. You might be paying less than you would. Just have to do the math. I would
It's so
love
interesting because I do see some charging ports at some places. Like for example, I know Lee's on Red Hills Road has like the charging station.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
But Yeah, they've had it there for a while. And my sister actually works for a company that supports EVs and stuff like that. But when we had Jeremy Barnes on here from Fesco, he was saying that he hasn't really seen the banks come up with like affordable financing for it. And
For
he
the
thinks
charging
that's what's
stations.
one for the cars themselves.
Oh,
He's
for the
saying that
cars.
he thinks that's the biggest blocker because when financing comes in, then it's gonna be widely adopted, or adoption would increase.
I didn't even realize that banks were differentiating between the two types. So I just thought financing a car is financing a car. But now that
No,
you
no,
brought it up,
yeah,
I will look into that and see what's going on in the market with financing electric vehicles. I don't know why there would be
check
a
it out.
hesitation. I
Check
guess
it out and let me know.
what's that?
I said check it out and let me know. And it could also be I think one of the things I heard is that they're unwilling to give it the same. So you see, like you'd get 10 years for a new car.
Yeah.
I don't think they're willing to give the same 10 years, which
Okay.
which impacts, of course, how much you pay. Because if it's
Yeah.
$12 million and you're paying it over 5 years, that's a
That's a
hefty
large
bill.
bill. I see what
Yeah,
you're saying. Yeah, because the risk is so new to
yeah.
Jamaica, and boy, our driving habits say a lot about
There you
us
go.
and the
Yeah.
willingness of, I guess, insurance companies and financial companies to take on new risks
There you
in
go.
that
Those
regard.
yeah, those two are really important pieces to the whole thing working. Because if we
Yeah.
can't get it affordably insured or get affordable financing, then it won't make sense.
Oh gosh.
Next
Yeah.
question is from Andrea. Do they use credit scores to determine the interest rate you'll get?
Absolutely. And I love that question because I'm like the town crier when it comes to credit scores and telling persons that they need to check their credit report because your credit report definitely impacts the rate that you're going to get. If it doesn't do it, if it doesn't happen right now, it will happen in the short term, the near future, in the next couple of years for sure. There are some banks already doing it and others will continue. So, yes, your credit report or your credit score can impact you getting a better rate as well.
Okay. Well, I know that they definitely have to. Well, I've seen maybe over the last few years that every time you request any form of financing, a credit report is pulled. Whether
Has
or
to.
not it makes a difference in the rate, I haven't really seen that.
And you
Where
won't see it. I'm telling you, the average consumer won't see it because they just say, oh, I got this loan, I got 20%. Oh, I got this loan, I got 5%. But
yeah,
you're not necessarily tying it to your credit rate. But in the back end, there's going
it
to be
is
there is a
okay.
distinction.
Interesting. Interesting. So that means all that is saying to me is that we need to have a session about the credit scores and the credit report. So we'll schedule that offline. I
Yeah.
had a personal question. It's how do you balance the lower payment amount with the total interest being paid? So you showed the situation where if you're paying for 5 years versus paying for 10 years, one is 101,000, one is 58,000. I know I'm paying less per month. Is that really worth it to pay? Because that difference was 1 million in interest
Yeah.
versus 1.9 over the 5 years. So it's pretty much you're paying twice the amount of
Of
interest over
interest,
the
even though your
period.
payment is half. So
Yeah.
it's just so if your income was, for example, $100,000, no, $200,000. Say income was $200,000 a month, and you're now thinking about purchasing a car, but the loan officer is saying that your income or the loan payment cannot exceed 50% of your income. You say, okay, I can manage the used car, I can manage the 100,000. But suppose you have other debt obligations, you have a mortgage, you have
Like most of us do.
unsecured loan that you took out, a student loan or whatever, and your total debt obligations is now $150,000 or $100,000, and you're saying, okay, well, I can only manage $50,000 more, or what? Yeah, if it's $70,000, I can only manage, or if it's $50,000 already, I can only manage $50,000 more. And so the option of the new car, you're like, okay, I can only manage $50,000 more. So maybe I should go for the new car because that's all I can manage. But I will do my best and try to pay it off faster. If I get like a side hustle, bringing some extra income.
Jillian, we always say that to ourselves, and we never pay it off sooner.
I mean, or you sell the car before you pay all of that $1.9 million in interest. There are
Yeah.
different options you can think about to get out of that. I mean, you're going to pay more interest, yes, but is what you, if you really want a car and that's what you can afford, you might lean towards an option. But my
So
option would always
some persons bring it down to like the time value of money. So to say, well, 1.9 over 10 years, it's not really 1.9, it's like 1.5 if you consider inflation and all of that. So
correct,
there are
correct,
persons who have said, if you pay a lower amount, then you can invest more, and the money you make from investing can,
pay off the
compensate. Because that's actually what I did once. We sold a car once and just put all of that proceeds into the stock market and actually just took a longer duration loan and was paying that one. So I weighed that versus putting that lump sum on the car loan, because at the time, for each million that you put on the car in terms of a deposit, it only saves you $10,000 about
in the
in
monthly
monthly
payment.
payments. I was
Yeah,
like, I'm putting $1 million on the car and you're just saving me $10,000. That almost didn't seem like a good use of funds, right?
yeah.
All right. I had a second question. Is there a difference between the process that banks um, offer versus credit unions for car financing? Is it more or less the same and it's just the rate or probably the processes that's different?
Well, my first loan was from a credit union when I was 19. The banks wouldn't even look at me at that age. So I went to the credit union because they, of course, how they work is that if you start to save with the credit
Yeah.
union, they will look at your saving and say, okay, this person is saving, let me give them a little loan. So that's how I ended up getting my loan at the credit union. But banks operate a little bit differently. Their processes may be a little bit more stringent. I mean, they're all regulated and all under some watchful eye to ensure that they're not doing any abhorrent lending practices. But you may find that the credit union, they they may have different processes that might make it easier. The banks, though, they're coming along and they're working with digitized processes now. So lending is transforming in Jamaica. I've seen it with my own eyes. So it may be actually easier to go to some of these places that have digitized loans. So
And
yeah.
I was gonna say, and it wouldn't necessarily make sense to take a car loan from like one of those, maybe a microfinancing or a smaller institution than a bank or a credit union, because those rates are likely going to be higher, right?
They may be higher, and as we were seeing, the banks are who had like the longer tenures to for
Yeah,
the used cars. The credit unions were a little bit more conservative in terms of what they were willing to lend for the used cars in terms of the period of time. So
yeah.
you may get better rates, you may get more favorable terms at the bank, but the credit union, I don't know. This I got my first car when I was 19. I'm very far from 19 now. So I don't know what the process is at the credit union these days.
Okay.
I know what the process is at the bank.
Yeah, I get you. I do
Yeah.
remember the credit union's process feeling a lot easier. You're right in that regard. And I've found that the credit unions over the years are trying to provide more options for financing, right? So while we were working with them, it felt a lot easier. But as you said, the tenure seemed shorter. So as opposed to where banks would typically give you like unsecured loan for 5 years, the credit union is like 3 years or
Yeah.
24 months to 36 months kind of thing. So they
Yeah.
can't really afford to take the same length of risk that the bank would. Well, at least at the time. I haven't taken a credit union loan in a couple of years as well.
Right.
David is saying, don't forget to mention a sinking fund, Gillian. Also, not every car needs 90 when 87 can work. I think he's talking about the transportation cost there.
Oh,
90 is a must for German vehicles in most cases, but people can spend less with 87 octane. So any comments there in terms of I definitely know some vehicles they'll tell you to use 90 and not 87. Have you seen a difference there? I mean, what do you do personally?
Um, hmm. I, I really don't know. I'm not sure at all because uh
Yeah, Renee will probably be the best to answer that because she used to work at in a lab, so where so she would understand the difference, but I know that she would insist that we buy 90, so I guess there is a difference in terms of that.
yeah, I buy
That
90.
makes
I
sense.
don't know.
Yeah. All right, question from Chang Yi. How do I build my credit score as a 22-year-old?
Take on credit. That's the best way to build your credit score and repay your loans on time. So, like a low limit credit card, if you can get one, or if you actually get a loan from a bank and you repay it every month. Even paying things like a utility bill and stuff on time. I don't know if they're impacting the credit score or not, but the credit bureau does collect data on your bill repayments. So just demonstrating a behavior of repaying your bills on time, not late, and that will help to boost your credit score.
Things that can go against our culture, right? Because sometimes we don't necessarily want to pay the bill on time, but those
Yeah.
things do have a factor. But yeah, Chang, I agree. I think I mean, and when Jillian says a small credit card, that's what she means. So, for example, if your disposable is like 100, it could even be a $25,000 credit card, something that you can comfortably pay. You're not at risk of going really over the limit, or you wouldn't have enough cash to clear it in full each month. That can be something that shows you can manage credit well and pay it consistently, right? Andrea was asking about history checks, but I think David answered that in the chat already. Is it available in Jamaica for used cars? That would be awesome to have,
Yeah.
but
It's
I don't think so.
if you do a valuation, well, it's yeah,
Yeah, that's what David was saying. Getting
yeah,
the valuation report can typically tell you a
yeah.
lot of
They are able to
things. Yeah.
check what
Yeah.
was going on.
Um, yeah. He also said, David Rose, buying a used car means carrying a mechanic to inspect the vehicle. Flooded
Correct.
cars, scrapped vehicles, and other damaged vehicles find their way onto our roads. I actually bought a car once. I didn't notice this. A year or two after I bought it, it turns out that it was crashed and it was fixed up. And it was after we're doing some body work on it, and the person showed me where the car got hit, where it was fixed, as like I would not have even known to look for something like that. So sometimes a
Oh,
mechanic as
yeah.
well as somebody who works on the body of the vehicle could be
Right.
able to whether or not those things might have happened.
Yeah.
Orville is saying a mechanical report. I haven't heard that term in a while, but yeah, that'd be something that makes sense. Um, Chang is saying, I don't pay bills as yet, so probably get it and use it online shopping, I guess, as relates to the credit card. I think Ingrid has a question here. Which is better, getting a loan or paying in full to buy the car?
Um, well, it depends on, as you, German, you spoke about this a while ago. When you look at the dollars and cents of it, I was saying earlier in the presentation that if you get a concessionary rate, for example, say if you get a lower rate because of you where you work, or if you're a government employee or something like that, and you get a lower rate, and that rate is lower than inflation, then to me, taking a loan, it doesn't hurt you, especially if you didn't have any other plans for, if you have the cash and you didn't have any other plans for it and you don't need to use it right now and you get a lower rate, then I would always say to go for the loan. but some people, they don't like debt, and it definitely depends on you and what you can manage. Every time I got a new car, I took out a loan on it, just because um I found that it was more manageable for me. So making those monthly payments psychologically was easier for me. If you're not really going down to the dollar and cents calculation of it. And of course, being able to qualify for a car that you like, you might not be able to get it upfront with the cash. You might be able to qualify for the monthly payment over a period of time, though, if you have a sustainable income. So it just depends on what you can tolerate.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Ingrid. It really comes down to you, as Julian said. I think um, there are pros and cons. So you may decide to take the loan at first, and then you decide that you don't want to be in debt anymore. There's nothing wrong with that. But just think about whether or not you can consistently afford it. There's this concept called the total cost of ownership. Look at the monthly amount for the loan, the fuel costs, the insurance costs, the maintenance and upkeep costs, and weigh all of that together and see whether or not it would make sense to own the vehicle in that way, because it may just be simpler to get, and this is a strategy I've heard some persons mention. Instead of going brand new, they'll maybe get the car 2 or 3 years old, so that massive depreciation would have already taken place. So it would have maybe lost 20 or 30% of its value. And then you can buy that car or look for them slightly used in terms of low mileage. And then you can try to get that vehicle. Now, the problem is you're not going to get 100% financing for it, but it will cost less and will still have some of the benefits of a newer vehicle, in that you may not spend as much on maintenance. You may not have to be, it might be still under warranty. And so that's something that you could look into. Right.
Right.
Amara is asking, is it better to pay a car loan over 5 years or 10? Amara, I'd say maybe scroll back to about 30 minutes into the video. Jillian did a breakdown between 5 year and 10 year. Jillian, can you bring it back up on screen? I'm thinking maybe we could just do that.
Sure. Oh, actually, was this already? Let me see if I can find it back.
So while we wait for that, Chang is asking, what do I consider low mileage? So low mileage is, it's going to be within context, right? So just look at what the best way to compare low mileage. Look at any used car site. So if they're selling like a 4-year-old car, 5-year-old car, look at maybe 4 or 5 cars. Look at what the mileage is. Do an average of that. If it's lower than that average, then it can be considered low mileage. So for example, there's a vehicle that I have now, the 4-year-old one that I mentioned. The mileage is 15,000. Most vehicles that are 4 years old are closer to 100,000 in terms of mileage. So that mine is definitely considered low mileage. So hope that helps. Okay. All right. So I'm going to share the screen. All right.
Oh, sorry. I have to click and it's coming up.
Yeah, I see it. All right, Amara, so I hope that helps. So the difference in 5 years in this example that Jillian used. And Jillian, it's your presentation. You can explain it.
Yeah, and I was going to say that you can also just I was going to bring up my side too. Even though this is not comparing apples with apples because the interest rate is different, the
Yeah.
interest yeah, so this would probably just be a slightly higher, like 60,000 or 62,000. And so if you go on my site, financialsensibility.com, and go to financial calculators, you can, sorry, it's a little bit slow. You can go to auto loan calculator and you can just put in the information for 5 years versus 10 years.
Yeah.
But in general, if you see from this that the payment is a little bit under double the amount for 5 years and 10 years. But you pay almost $1 million more in interest over the same period of time, over the longer period of time, rather.
Yeah. All right. And I think the final comment here, Andrea is saying, opportunity cost. She prefers to keep some cash, which she can use to buy some stocks, and she'll finance if the interest rate is cheap. Yeah, I mean, and that's what most persons who are investors will do. If you're not an investor, you would necessarily be looking at it in that way. But it really depends on where you are and the things that are important for you. At some point, for us, my wife and I, it mattered that we had the experience of a brand new car. At this stage in our lives, it's not as important anymore. So our next cars will likely be slightly used, but at least we could say we had the experience of owning a brand new car, seeing what that experience was like. I can tell you, it's not all it's cracked up to be. The feeling lasts you pretty much a couple of months, right? Because then it will start to feel like a used car, because then it is. So, but it really comes down to what's your priority and what matters to you. All right, Jillian, do you have any closing comments? I'm not seeing any more questions, but I think we gave them some good value here as usual. So,
Yeah.
Any closing comments?
Thanks for having me, and I look forward to hearing which one you decide on, new versus used.
Okay. Yes, I'll start that poll right after this video, and then we'll post it on Twitter and our YouTube community page, and then we'll give it like maybe a couple of days, and then we see where we are. All right, so thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video. That helps us out a great deal, and we'll see you for the very next video.
Learning is the key to successful investing, and who doesn't want to invest in some way?
Here at L.E.A.R.N Invest, we focus on financial education, all with the aim of sharing our knowledge on personal finance, investing, and building wealth. We do this on the foundation of our faith in God.
If a more holistic approach is what you need, check out our Grow Faith-based financial coaching program.
Find out more about us at learngrowinvestclub.com.